We'd like to welcome all our online viewers to this session in the Sagar Manthan Great Oceans Dialogue. So we have an interesting session today based on cooperation and trust. Now, with me in this discussion today, we have Dawoon Young, who is a lecturer at the Australian National Centre for Ocean Resources and Security at the University of Wollongong in Australia. And I also have the pleasure of welcoming John Ulanga, who is the Director of Economic Diplomacy in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation in the United Republic of Tanzania. So our session today is we are looking about how states are rushing to access critical resources, and that has fueled high stakes competition and fostered a culture of potential mistrust and suspicion among states. And some of the consequences of these are environmental degradation. Now, oceans have been a theater of naval conflict and projections of power for most of our history, but it's only in the mid-20th century where we saw competition for ocean resources as a fuel of conflict. And ocean resources historically were seen as inexhaustible. But in the 1960s, at the United Nations General Assembly, a diplomat from Malta, Arvid Pardo, brought to the attention of the world the competition for resources of the deep seabed, for example, and looked at how it is fueling competition between developed nations and developing nations. So this discussion we have is a very historical one, but it's also rooted in contemporary issues. So to start off this discussion relating to cooperation, I'd like to just quote a famous African proverb. It states that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So now with those opening words, John, as a diplomat for East African cooperation, I thought you should set the stage and talk to us a little bit about cooperation between states in general and trust as a concept.
Absolutely. Thank you so much first for starting the discussion with the African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go further, go together. This underpins and underlines the importance of cooperation. As nation states, even as individuals, there's hunger and urge to succeed, to develop. And the temptation is always to go alone and go fast. But the effect of going fast is probably you're going fast towards the wrong direction, or you are going fast at the expense of others. So in Africa, we are saying the real success is a result of really going with others, making sure you succeed together, you develop together. So in diplomacy, and I think the history of diplomacy around the world is a result of the realization that no nation stands on its own. No nation can develop on its own. So we have to develop diplomatic framework for first identifying common development objectives, for resolving potential conflicts, for addressing conflicts when they have arisen. So currently, of course, as we all know, probably especially after the Second World War, but also after the First World War, there was this huge realization that to avoid conflicts, but also for us to move together as the world, we have to have international frameworks for cooperation, for developing together. So there are the formation of United Nations and many bodies under United Nations at African continent, Europe, Asia, Americas. We always have all those frameworks for cooperation at national level, but also non-government organizations. So I think it's important to talk about what, for example, here in India, the conversation around oceans. Over 70% of this world, of the earth, is occupied by oceans. You see, but this is where we probably have least visibility as human beings. You see, it's easy to see what is across or on land, but to see what is out there in the oceans, and especially in deep sea, we really have to have those strong development or cooperation frameworks. So I think I'll be happy to have this conversation of saying the existing, but also the potential new development or cooperation framework for oceans to ensure that we exhaust the resources we have, but for mutual benefit without degrading the environment.
Thanks, John. So that was a nice way of setting out the African proverb and contextualizing it in our modern context. And also, you touched on issues like sea blindness as well. That's something that hinders a lot of aspects of cooperation as well. So, John, now having set the stage, who are some of the major players or the major actors involved in cooperating in this ocean setting?
First, as we know, of course, governments, all nation or nation states have maritime departments and expertise, and they form a major part of cooperation framework. And we also have intergovernmental organizations. And of course, as you know, at UN level, we have the conventions that governs the laws of the oceans. And I know there has been a lot of conversations and debates, also because of the blindness of what others suspect is going and is probably is not determined. But also, more importantly, we have academics. I think we should not undervalue the importance of academics, because academics really lead into research, into new knowledge, into innovation that can also help the legislative work that is done by governments. But also, thirdly, we have non-governmental players, a lot of non-state actors, both from not-for-profit, but also from for-profit organizations that are key players. And I think platforms like this, the Great Oceans Dialogues, bring together all those players and then explore opportunities to further cooperation and further explore the opportunities that are available in the oceans.
Yeah, so we have so many players involved.
Absolutely.
It's not just state parties.
Absolutely.
And if you look at the recent UN General Assembly report on oceans and the law of the sea, there were scores of intergovernmental organizations that contributed to that report. You often find in tribunals and in court settings, like recent advisory opinions on climate change and the law of the sea. There were so many different non-state parties contributing to that discussion. And it really buttresses this concept of cooperation. So John, thanks for setting the stage for us. And then Darwin, I just want to move a little bit more into the details now of these ocean natural resources as a source of potential state conflict. And you've got governance issues that are critical to managing the state conflict. But I wanted to just first start off by maybe just enlightening us about what are the issues about the effectiveness of this present governance framework in relation to our ocean natural resources.
Thank you, Vishal, for the question. As John and Vishal highlighted cooperation, I also want to highlight the regional cooperation for the protection of the marine environment. And I also want to give an example of the UNEP Regional Seas Program. UNEP Regional Seas Program was established to facilitate the cooperation between states having the shared maritime areas or maritime ecosystems. And in the Indian Ocean regions, the South Asian Cooperative Environmental Program was established in 1980s, and it has suggested solutions to several challenges such as pollution, biodiversity loss, and climate change. But some systems, some UNEP Regional Seas Program have much more effective systems, such as in North Atlantic Seas or Baltic Seas, but others are less effective because they just provide minimal cooperation just because of the lack of the political will among the member states or the lack of the funding. But still, I believe that this regional cooperation, including the UNEP Regional Seas Program, will strengthen and help states to develop the ocean governance in a sustainable and more effective way. Thank you.
Wonderful. So Darwin, what are some of the new initiatives and activities that are happening in the space that you think that our viewers would find very interesting to know about?
I want to talk about the BBNJ Treaty, which is one of the hot issues in the ocean
Very
governance.
topical, yeah.
Yes, so it is commonly referred to the High Seas Treaty because it aims to manage the conservation and sustainable use of the marine biodiversity in areas beyond the national jurisdiction. And it was agreed upon in March last year, and it aims to achieve the sustainable protection of marine environment and sustainable of management of the marine renewable marine resources in the high seas. And it provides several regulations relating to environment impact assessment, area-based management tools, marine genetic resources, and capacity building and the transfer of the marine technology. India, interestingly, and I think it's a great achievement that India signed the BBNJ Treaty in September this year, but still we have a long way to go because for the BBNJ Treaty requires 60 states ratification to enter into force. So I believe that many states should discuss and consider the ratification of the BBNJ Treaty for the protection of the marine environment in the high seas, where constitute 2/3 of the oceans. Thank you.
Well, it's great that you started off this discussion referring to the BBNJ Treaty. And I think that it was a wonderful exercise in multilateralism because since the Convention on the Law of the Sea was adopted 40 years ago, and it's implementing agreements roughly about 30 years ago, we wondered whether states can come together, all of the states, most of the states in the world come together and have an agreement like this. And the fact that it took place, although it took almost 20 years of negotiations, but the fact that it was adopted was a remarkable exercise in multilateralism. So I think maybe perhaps to bring these little discussions to a close, now that we've got a general context and now that we've focused it on some of the issues in the ocean space, maybe we'll just open the floor in a sense and discuss how all of these maritime players that you've spoken about can foster trust and promote transparency in their activities, from negotiating treaties to conducting research to engaging in diplomacy. So, Darwin, maybe you want to go ahead and we'll leave some final thoughts with John.
Yeah, I want to talk about two issues. One is public participation, and second, ocean data management. The first, public participation is vital and critical in the decision-making process of the government policies and process. And public participation ensures that a lot of the different stakeholders are considered in the decision-making process. And in particular, I want to talk about the local communities' role because they possess valuable local knowledge about the marine environment and marine ecosystem and how the human activities impact on them. So it is very important to bring all different stakeholders and their national interest, their interest in the decision-making process. And second point about the ocean data management, we were constantly talking about cooperation, and it is because a lot of the ocean issues cannot be solved by the one state alone. So we really need a cooperation, and I believe that ocean environmental data can play an important role in the setting the priorities and identifying issues and monitoring environmental status. And based on the environmental data, then we can think about and develop the project and policies for the better the ocean governance. So in that context, I believe that developing the ocean, the regional database, which can be accessed by the different stakeholders, can be very important for the protection of marine environment. And also, I think that the regional organizations such as UNEP, Regional Seas Program, or other regional bodies can support and developed this ocean database. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. You know, we're speaking so much in conceptualizing things and speaking in abstract, but your suggestions are very practical. So that's really helpful. So thanks. John, do you have any parting remarks?
I first agree completely with what she has said. Public participation increases transparency. It also increases trust. Once the public is involved in various processes, they know what's going on, they develop trust. And then that can also lead into further agreements or addressing issues. But also data monitoring, and especially if part of that is kind of an independent data monitoring system, that gives people the trust that this is the third party data monitoring system that everyone can trust. That will also increase transparency. But also forums or platforms like this one, the Great Oceans Dialogue, and I'm glad that India has decided to establish such a dialogue. I think they are saying that India is the only country that has an ocean named after it. I think this carries a huge responsibility, that they can take the responsibility of doing the convening like they have done this great oceans dialogue, of putting together, increasing this public participation, creating further mechanism for making data available, capturing, analyzing the data, and also having conversations. What does this data tell us? And especially for what is happening, you know, we talk about national jurisdictions, but what is happening outside the national jurisdictions have impact on what could be happening within the national jurisdictions. So how do we collect data, and how do we ensure that the public is involved in the activities that are also happening outside the national jurisdictions? Because different from land borders, ocean borders are very fluid, you see. So those type of conversations are important to continue.
So both Darwin and myself as legal academics were very interested in that part about jurisdiction. Absolutely. Because as you know, fish don't respect boundaries, criminals don't respect boundaries.
Absolutely.
So cooperation is important.
Absolutely.
And how do they communicate data? How do they communicate results?
Absolutely.
And enforcement?
Absolutely.
It's really important.
Absolutely.
So to all our viewers out there, we'd like to thank you for participating and listening in this discussion. And we've had perspectives from both academics and diplomats and practitioners in international relations. So we look forward to ongoing discussions as we participate in this Great Oceans Dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.